Attorney Haji, and welcome to Corner Tips, the Law and the Market. Our topic for today's discussion is Part 2 of the aggravating circumstances under the Revised Penal Code. So, let's go and let's start. On our first episode, we ended up at number 7, or this aggravating circumstance, that the crime be committed on the occasion of conflagration, shipwreck, earthquake, epidemic, or other calamity or misfortune. Now, our next topic is this aggravating circumstance, that the crime be committed with the aid of armed men or persons who ensure or afford immunity. Guys, pareho ba ito ng ban? Hindi ito pareho ng ban. Kasi sa aid of armed men, ang requisites nito is that armed men or persons took part in the commission of the crime directly or indirectly, and that the accused availed himself of their aid or relied upon them when the crime was committed. Now, by a band means 3 or more than 3. Ito, kahit isa lang yung backup ng akusado or dalawa, with the aid of armed men na yan, as long as equipped siya ng armas. Okay. Now, if the accused relied on the presence of armed men availing himself the aid of the latter, his liability is aggravated. However, where it appeared that the accused were not merely present at the scene of the crime, but were in conspiracy with the assailant, shooting the victim, and leaving the scene together after apparently accomplishing their purpose, clearly evidencing the conspiracy, this circumstance cannot be appreciated. Why? Because they are considered as principals by direct cooperation or what? By direct principals by direct participation. In other words, they are considered as principals. Okay? And they are not just conspirators. Okay. Now, to distinguish with the aid of armed men and with a band, this is with the aid of armed men, they are present even if one of the offenders merely relied on their aid. Actual aid is not necessary. While by a band, it requires more than 3 armed male factors who all acted together in the commission of offense. Okay? So, that's clear. Next is that the accused is a recidivist. Okay, guys, we will discuss this together with the 4 forms of repetition. We discuss first recidivism. Ano ba yung recidivist? A recidivist is one who, at the time of his trial of one crime, shall have been previously convicted by final judgment of another crime embraced in the same title of the Revised Penal Code. Requisites. First is the offender is on trial for an offense, and he was previously convicted by final judgment of another crime. And both the first and the second offense are embraced in the same title of the Revised Penal Code, not a special law, and that the offender is convicted of the new offense. Okay, so, ganito. Same title of the Revised Penal Code, ha? So, pag sinabing same title, robbery and theft, both belong to Title 10. So, pag nanakaw ka at robber ka, recidivist ka. Okay? You need to be convicted first in one crime. Syempre, ano bang mauna? Theft or robbery? Sa mga kriminal, una, theft muna. Pangalawa, saka pa lang sila nagiging robbery kasi Bribery relies on the use of force, threat, or intimidation. While in theft, kuha lang. Kumbaga, snatch lang. Okay? Now, second example is between homicide and physical injuries. They belong to Title 8 of the Revised Penal Code. Okay. Now, in recidivism, the crimes committed should be felonies. Recidivism cannot be had if the crime committed is a violation of the special law. Okay. So, ano ba yung special law? Illegal possession of firearms, RA 7610 or the violation of the child abuse law. Hindi mo siya pwede na convicted ka na nanakit ka ng bata under RA 7610, tapos may physical injuries ka after mo ma-serve yung sentence mo doon, hindi po yun. Take note of the requisite na the offender is previously convicted by final judgment of another crime. So, kailangan sa dalawang crime, meron siyang unang conviction sa first offense. And sa second offense, ay dito mag-apply yung recidivism. Okay? So, chill. Next. Okay na yan, Next topic is number 10. That the offender has been previously punished for an offense to which the law attaches an equal or greater penalty, or for two or more crimes to which it attaches a lighter penalty. This is what you call reiteration or habituality. Okay. Ano ba yung habituality? Dito, the penalty attached to a crime subsequently committed should be higher or at least equal to the penalty that he has already served. If that is the situation, that means the offender was never informed by the fact that he already served the penalty imposed on him on the first conviction. However, if he commits a felony carrying a lighter penalty, subsequently, the law considers that somehow he has been reformed. But he again commits another penalty which carries a lighter penalty. So, sa habituality or reiteration, here's an example. Basagulero ka, tambay ka, parati kang lasing. So previously, you are, what's this? You are convicted of alarms and scandals. Basic. Dahil lasinggero ka, nagwala ka, hinuli ka ng tanod sa barangay, kinasuhan ka, but you are convicted of alarms and scandals. And the penalty for alarms and scandals, I guess, is arresto minor. Okay? And what is reiteration? Reiteration or habituality it is essential that the offender be previously punished and that he has served sentence. Okay. Sabi sa law, the offender has been previously punished for an offense to which the law attaches an equal or greater penalty, or for two or more crimes to which it attaches a lighter penalty. So, ibig sabihin, pag na-convict ka ulit for another misdemeanor like light physical injuries which attaches the equal penalty of arresto minor, that will be an additional, the penalty will be aggravated. Why? Because of this aggravating circumstance, habituality or reiteration. In short, paulit-ulit na lang. Okay? Next. There are 4 forms of repetition. So, yung una, yung recidivism. Second is reiteration or habituality. Letter C, we will discuss this next. is multiple recidivism or habitual delinquency. And last is quasi-recidivism. We will discuss this. Okay. In habitual delinquency, what does this mean? When a person within a period of 10 years from the date of his release or last conviction of the crimes of serious or less serious physical injuries, robbery, theft, estafa, or falsification is found guilty of any of said crimes a third time or oftener. Guys, memorize this. Why? Because ito yung meaning nito. Within a period of 10 years, habitual, hindi ka lang, hindi na to recidivism, hindi rin to habitual, no? Hindi rin ito habituality or reiteration. This is habitual delinquency. This involves bigger crimes like robo, robbery, hurto, theft, estafa, or falsification is found guilty, and serious or less serious physical injuries. The penalty for this ranges from prison correctional to, say, depending on the amount ng estafa, to prison mayor. Serious or less serious physical injuries is prison correctional. Robbery, prison correctional to prison mayor. Theft, depending on the amount, and estafa also depending on the amount. Ito guys, this applies to persons who are serious in the crime, in making crimes or making money criminally. Okay? So when an accused is found guilty a third time or oftener of the offenses of serious or less serious physical injuries, robo, hurto, estafa, or falsification, he is liable for habitual delinquency. And that is a bigger, what's this? Aggravating circumstance. Because this is an extraordinary aggravating circumstance. And hindi siya pwedeng i-minus or i-equalize ng isang generic mitigating circumstance. Next is quasi-recidivism. In quasi-recidivism, any person who shall commit a felony after having been convicted by final judgment before beginning to serve such sentence or while serving the same shall be punished by the maximum period of the penalty prescribed by law for the new felony. Okay. Usually in quasi-recidivism, guys, ito yung mga akusado na nasa loob na ng kulungan. Kasi convicted na siya by final judgment. And while serving his sentence ay gumawa siya ng katarantaduhan sa kulungan. So, by doing so, he is liable for the crime, although the penalty prescribed for this is he shall only be punished for the maximum period of the penalty in addition to the crime, the imprisonment he is currently serving. So this is an additional time of imprisonment. Okay? So that is quasi-recidivism. This applies usually to persons who are already convicted and serving jail time in the prison. Next is that the crime be committed in consideration of a price, reward, or promise. Ito guys yung example ng crime based on contract killings or kidnapping for ransom. Contract killings and kidnapping for ransom. So, to discuss this, the requisites for this aggravating circumstance is there must be at least two principals. First is the principal for inducement or the mastermind, and second is the principal by direct participation. Second, the price, reward, or promise should be previous to and in consideration of the commission of the criminal act. So there must be first a evidence to show that there was a contract executed between the two criminals. Meron silang pinag-usapan. Meron silang usapan na pag nagawa ito ng tirador or nagawa ito ng kidnapper, ransom. Magbibigay siya ng pera or magbabayad siya pag napatay niya to. So there must be evidence to show price, reward, or promise. Okay? So simple lang yan, guys. Next is that the crime be committed by means of inundation, fire, poison, explosion, stranding a vessel, or international damage, or derailment of a locomotive, or by use of any other artifice involving great waste or ruin. The requisite here is that the wasteful means were used by the offender to accomplish a criminal purpose. Okay. Take note, guys, na by means of inundation, nilunod. Okay? Nilunod siya. By fire, not necessarily arson, this aggravating circumstance is absorbed in the crime of arson. But if the crime of homicide is committed by using fire or using explosion, pinasabog, so this is considered as an aggravating circumstance. Also, poison, by the use of poison. Stranding a vessel or intentional damage, derailment of a locomotive, MRT siguro, or any other artifice involving great waste or ruin. So the normal circumstance here is may nilunod ka. May pinatay ka gamit ang pagsunog, or may pinatay ka gamit ang pagpoison, or sumakit yung tiyan niya, pinasakit mo yung tiyan niya by the means of poison or explosion. So this is an example of that aggravating circumstance. Okay? Here. Next is that the act be committed with evident premeditation. The essence of premeditation is the execution of the criminal act must be preceded by a cool thought and reflection upon the resolution to carry out the criminal intent during the space of time sufficient to arrive at a calm judgment. Actually, guys, if I were you, evident premeditation is the hardest aggravating circumstance to prove. Kasi you must establish first the time that the accused used in planning to commit a crime. You must establish that in court. Take note in our first part, each aggravating circumstance must be proven in court. Otherwise, wala siya. So, ang evident premeditation ay mahirap i-prove in court. Why? It's requisite, tandaan nyo, the time when the offender determined to commit a crime, an act manifestly indicating that the culprit has clung to his determination, and a sufficient lapse of time between the determination and execution to allow him to reflect upon the consequences of his act. So, dito pa lang guys, at the time when the offender determined to commit the crime, if you were the prosecutor, how will you determine this? by independent evidence. Okay? So, evident premeditation is the hardest aggravating circumstance. Okay? So, that's it. And for this episode, we will discuss our last, before we go to the last part, is that craft, fraud, or disguise be employed. In craft, ano ba to? It involves intellectual trickery and cunning on the part of the accused. Niloko mo siya. It is employed as a scheme in the execution of crime. Accused pretended to be members of the constabulary, accused in order to perpetrate rape, use chocolates containing drugs. Okay. Craft involves intellectual trickery. Usually, estafa. Craft, intellectual trickery, and cunning. This is a perfectly used in estafa. Craft. For our last part, we will discuss this very interesting aggravating circumstance. That craft, fraud, or disguise be employed. First is craft. This involves intellectual trickery and cunning on the part of the accused. Kumbaga, super magulang. This involves a scheme in the execution of the crime. Kumbaga, this guy is an intellectual, na a professional criminal para makagawa ng krimen. Okay? Kumbaga, nag-magic siya para lang magawa to. So the example is this: the accused pretended to be members of the constabulary, or the accused pretended to be members of the police in order to perpetrate rape, or use chocolates containing drugs, then perpetrate rape. Okay. Next is fraud. Fraud involves insidious words or machination used to induce victims to act in a manner which would enable the offender to carry out his design. Guys, this fraud is not applicable in estafa because fraud is an element of estafa. So, insidious words or machination used to induce victim to act in a manner which would enable the offender to carry out his design. You can use this in seduction or qualified seduction. Okay? So, fraud involves a direct inducement through entrapping or beguiling language or machinations. So, perfect to sa crimes against children, abuse of children. So, there is fraud. Next is disguise. So, ito guys, yung parang professional criminal talaga. They resort to any device to conceal their identity. Usually, kidnappers, robbers, thieves, na magnanakaw, naka-face mask, or through these guys, may suot na helmet, riding in tandem. So, these are disguises to conceal the identity. So, this must be alleged in the information that they use disguise to conceal their identity. So, the requisites of this, madali lang. The offender must have actually taken advantage of craft, fraud, or disguise to facilitate the commission of the crime. So, the circumstance is characterized by the intellectual or mental approach rather than the physical means to which criminal resorts to carry out his intention. This is inherent in estafa and falsification. So, that's it. So, this will be the end of the second part, and I hope, guys, that you enjoyed our discussion for tonight. So, once again, this is Attorney Hachi, and you are on Attorney Tips.